Welcome in our
That was
1320
a
Kings
crazy
insider.
2 weeks, man.
Welcome in our 1320 Kings insider, James Ham. James, we were kind of like looking back on some of the weirder moments of the season, and now it's kind of centered on what a wild experience that 2+, and it was really like a 3-week
Yeah,
stretch of Kings Warriors and
because
what
it was the
that
whole week leading up to it.
right. It what a wild time that was in this NBA season.
It almost felt like when you're watching like a teenage show and somebody goes and steals the other team's mascot. You know, it felt like it was like a really, really cool, fun back and forth, wild, great series, and clearly the best series that we've seen in this entire playoff run. Yeah, good stuff. And you know, it's good to have two communities so close where like there was so much battling going back and forth. There were so many fans that went back and forth between the two arenas. So yeah, I don't think it could have been a better re-entry into the playoff world for the Sacramento Kings in that series.
Yeah, it was heat.
Yeah, it was
some heat
for sure. I had Drapes apologizing on behalf of everybody, and I didn't co-sign that.
Drapes, I apologize for media members. Drapes, mind your damn business. We got this, Drapes. We're good.
James, I don't know if I ever mentioned this to you. Get your thought about it. Now that we just talked about it, I said that Game 6 win. I think at the time I said it was the biggest win in the history of this franchise, Sacramento era. I thought everything that was up against them at that moment. I thought that was the biggest win in franchise history.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to like put all of the wins and losses in specific order. The first time they won a playoff series. What's that?
So there's not a lot of those moments. That's what made it a little easier for me.
Well, no, I mean, I get that, but like making it into the 1995-96 playoffs was huge. Getting your first playoff win was huge. Winning your first playoff series was huge. You know, like pushing the Lakers to 7
Mike
games.
Bibby. Yeah, Mike Bibby.
Yeah, there's all kinds of big time moments. So, I mean, you might be right. It's certainly the biggest game in the last, 20 years without any question. But whether it's the biggest game ever, I'm not sure.
The only reason I put that there is that was the first time, I guess you could say Minnesota in 04, that Game 6, but they were facing, that was at home. They were facing the end of their season. Everybody really thought their season was over. I don't think anybody thought, outside of Sacramento, I didn't think anybody thought they were going to go into Golden State after the way the Warriors had played a Game 5 and keep their season going. And they never were faced with that in LA. And they, in the 2002 series, they weren't faced with that in the Utah in 99. They weren't able to do that in 95, 96 with Seattle. And against all odds, they went into Golden State, won that Game 6. And we talked about it earlier a little bit. Golden State was one of the best home teams in the league. They had 40, or maybe not 40, I think 30-something wins.
Yeah, it was
30 and single-digit losses. And they went in there. Not only did they win, they beat them down in that game. It's a good conversation, but I think that was
it's
maybe
up there.
The best win of all time.
Yeah, it's up there. I mean, I'm not going to disagree. It's up there, but it's also a first round playoff series, and magnitudes changes the further and further you get. And I don't want to be disrespectful to some games that we've forgotten that were so incredible and so important from the past. Even again, like the 94-95 season, the last game of the season, the Kings lost and missed the playoffs by a game. That's one that stands out like tremendously, where it could have gone the other way. And then the next season, they actually make it at the end of the season. So yeah, there's always, even regular season games, there's always been highly meaningful games that hide out here and there that you forget.
Do you have a favorite moment this season, Kings or otherwise?
I don't know. Like they all blend in together. I mean, that's something when you've covered so many games, that they do kind of blend in together. I think, if like we talk about my favorite moment is just like the overarching theme of the season of like love and joy that this team had. It's something that I hadn't really experienced, where they just all embraced each other. They had such a good time. They had the defensive player of the game all the time. And they had, all of these moments where either Mike Brown was, crazy and funny, or Fox, or, it's just the spirit of this team is my favorite thing to cover. It was the best, like the most fun that I've had covering a team, but also sort of the best group to be around. And a lot of that's because they won. Like I've covered some good groups, but when you don't when you don't win, eventually that stuff wears off, and it doesn't have nearly the, sort of the bounce that it normally would have. So yeah, I'm intrigued to see how this team looks next season, and if they can replicate just the spirit of the team and how together they were. And that to me is it was such an overarching theme for this entire season.
Is there, I know you super locked in on the Kings, but you follow the league in general. Was there a story around the league that it didn't have to be this, all timer, but something that was funny, something memorable, something like that around the league that sticks out to you?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is just the disappointment with the Ja Morant situation, and how it just kept coming back, and how they just didn't seem to know how to deal with some of it. It's not just the major incident that happens, but it's also the other smaller incidents that happened that, were kind of swept under the rug and pushed to the side by the NBA and by the Grizzlies. I think that that's like one of the darker things to this season. Outside of that, the Kings are the story of the year. They are. So I think we here in Sacramento, it's always a story of the year because it's the only team in town. But for me, they were the story of the NBA. Everybody was watching it unfold. The Kings have never had a season where they win Coach of the Year, Executive of the Year, G League Executive of the Year, best training staff, best uh, whatchamacallit, equipment staff, two all NBA players, two all-stars, an all rookie selection. Like it just kept stacking up. And like I think that is, like, if you're not looking at the Kings as like the story of the year outside of Sacramento, I'm not sure what you're paying attention to if you're an NBA fan. That, and then the Jokic stuff. Like I think Jokic is just, everyone is getting to see what like true NBA fans have seen, that this dude is just absolutely amazing and something to be cherished. He's different. He's odd. I don't care if he wants to, have like endorse a bunch of things or all that stuff. I don't care about any of it. He's just incredible to watch, and he's the other story of the league for me.
You talk about this team being the story of the season, and what's our guy's name? Brian, it's Custer?
Brian Custer.
Brian Custer. He said on ESPN that the question was what team in the West, has the best chance to compete with the Denver Nuggets next year, and Brian said the Sacramento Kings. Mm-hmm. And one particular individual who I won't trash, I don't think this individual is very good at all, but she laughed like that was ridiculous. Her selection was the Los Angeles Lakers.
Come on, man.
And I thought, okay, like I get it. You work for ESPN. You're not paying attention to Sacramento even after a 7-round series or a 7-game series with the Golden State Warriors. But you laughed at Brian for saying Sacramento, and you selected the Los Angeles Lakers, in which every game you're entering praying that one or both of your stars are going to be available for that season. But you laughed at that, and it was just like, man, we're going to enter another season where most people have no idea what's going on with the Sacramento Kings. It's unfortunate. I think they're going to be on national TV more, but I think that same, yeah, right, is still going to be continuing all of next year.
I just don't get it. What, are they excited because it's possible that Austin Reeves might be dating Taylor Swift and they're going to see Taylor Swift at a game? Is that what makes them intriguing?
Wait, is that a shoot? Is that real? Is Austin Reeves dating Taylor Swift?
That's what the streets are saying.
That's what
Austin Reeves, some jersey at one of her shows.
Good for Austin Reeves.
There's some rumors out there, but at the same time, like, Is that what you're looking at? Because you shouldn't be that intrigued by that team at all. Like, I don't know what's intriguing about that team. Like, they're going to have a really, really tough time bringing back Austin Reeves and Rui Hachimura. And then they need 8 more players. Like, I get it. Like, they could make it back to the Western Conference Finals and all that stuff. But, like, look, there's a lot of teams. Like, I saw the other report today that the Warriors believe that they can come back with Draymond Green and Jordan Poole and compete for a title next season. And I didn't know which was like funnier, like that you can bring Jordan Poole back, that you can bring Draymond Green back, or that you can compete for an NBA championship. Like which one of those? I don't know if any of those things are.
The answer is always Draymond. Whenever you're trying to find the funniest part is always Draymond.
Well, together they don't make any sense. The entire statement doesn't make any sense.
Most
together.
of Draymond Green doesn't make sense.
So yeah, I'm not sure. You got a guy who, like there's a good chance that he will be in a different uniform next year. There's a good chance that both him and Jordan Poole will be in a different uniform next year. And I think that there's a better chance of that happening than you being in a title contention. Like that to me, that was strange. So I don't know who to say is going to be the odds-on favorite to be in competition, because like we've talked about this, every other team is facing like a super uphill battle, like a huge uphill battle. So the Kings are one of the teams on the rise, and there are other teams on the rise too, but the Kings jumped out and are further ahead of them at this point. And then there's a bunch of teams that are either on the decline or have some major question marks. Like we don't know what's going to happen with the Chris Paul situation in Phoenix. We don't know if Paul George or Kawhi Leonard can play 40 games each. The Lakers are a huge question mark. The Warriors are a huge question mark just because of their tax situation and all these moves that they probably have to make at some point. And they're a team that got bounced in the second round to a suspect Lakers team. You got the Ja Morant situation. Like there's just so much going on. Even Minnesota hasn't figured anything out with their 2 bigs. And, the Pelicans took a step back. Like there's so many things going on right now that the Kings are the one team that's kind of laying low behind the Denver Nuggets and have a potential to build on what they're doing, not to completely change direction or switch their coach or do all of the things that we're seeing from some of these other teams that are out there.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds crazy to say when you talk about the Sacramento Kings, but they almost are the most stable of the teams outside of the Nuggets, the most reliable to a certain degree. But, they have kings across their chest, so there's still people who don't look at them as being stable. And, they're going to have to show it. And look, I understand that. You got to get the respect of a franchise that's, been successful for multiple years. You have to be successful for multiple years a lot of the time. So I understand it. But like we've said, I don't think there's anybody outside of the Kings that you can definitively say in the Western Conference. You can definitively say, yeah, they're going to be on their game. They're going to be ready to go next year outside of Denver.
Yeah, and I mean, I fully expect still the Kings to make substantial changes. I mean, we're talking about the potential for 7 to 8 roster changes, like that many. They easily could be 7 to 8 roster changes on this team. And I mean, we have no idea, but the core is still going to be there. The core of, Fox and Monk and Sabonis and Keegan Murray and Kevin Huerter, like Davion Mitchell. Chances are that group is going to be there. And then what can you build around it? And this is the mantra of maintain and improve. Like it's not going to be easy. It's going to be fun to watch though. And I think the Kings, again, this is about building. It's not about rebuild. It's not about changing directions. It's not about any of those things that we've seen for the last 16 seasons before this summer. This is very specific. It's about adding to what you already have and building something that's sustainable long-term, specifically with the hopes of retaining Sabonis next summer, retaining Malik Monk next summer.
I mean, there's definitely some change coming. You mentioned the roster spots, but we saw a change over the weekend. Bobby Jackson is leaving us. He's headed to join Nick Nurse's staff in Philadelphia. obviously leaving a vacancy for the Stockton Kings position, but Bobby was at every playoff game this year. Obviously, we've seen Bobby in this market for 2 decades now. That sucks. I'm happy for Bobby. It sucks that we're losing him, but I'm happy for him in the advancement of his coaching career.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you look at the way that the staff is currently constructed, I actually think that the fact that Jordy Fernandez stayed is probably what started the move for Bobby Jackson to go find something different. And maybe I'm wrong there, but I was able to get confirmation pretty quickly. I've known Bobby for a long time, and Bobby, he's a guy who wants to eventually become a head coach, but he wants to be a basketball coach. It's what he does. It's who he is. He's coached his daughter's teams forever. He coaches youth here in Sacramento. I was surprised a little bit that kind of popped like that, but I think it does have a direct correlation to Jordy Fernandez. When you're a new coach coming into a situation like Mike Brown was, and you have legacy former players that have become coaches that come with the job, that's not easy. And so in Sacramento, it's been Bobby for a long time. Bobby worked with me at NBC for my first year on the job, but then he's been back in the coaching ranks. He was also, I think, on Paul Westfall's staff. Like, he's been in and out in Sacramento for the better part of like the last decade, maybe 13, 14 years. And so when you moved him to the G League and he showed you what he could do at the G League, and then he ran the best record in the G League, and sure, they got bounced in the playoffs, but they still had a massive amount of success. They had player growth, Nemias Queta, Keon Ellis, a lot of their players took major leaps and bounds. He kind of did everything that he could do at the G League level. He showed you he could be a head coach. And but again, sometimes it does come down to, you got one legacy guy already on your staff in Doug Christie, and Mike Brown, like, he had to make difficult decisions in the past. And like, this is one where, probably there wasn't room for Bobby on the main staff in Sacramento this year. And so he went out and found something that fit him better, and good for him. And I think that they'll have no problems finding a coach that can step in at the G League level and find some success.
We kind of speculated who that might be going to Stockton, and we said somebody maybe from that second row of coaches, maybe a Lindsey Harding going down there. Is that typically how that goes? You get somebody from your staff on the NBA team and maybe incorporate them into being the head coach for the G League team, or is it another wide-ranging search like any other head coaching job?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, because they've done all kinds of things down there in the past. Wasn't it they brought in David Arsenault at one point, who was from, what's it, small school? Him and his dad coached at a small school where they score 150 points a game or something. They've tried different things down there for sure. And at this point, I think it's going to be, I think Monty likes the way that they've started to develop talent. They, in the front office, on the coaching staff, where guys are being mentioned for jobs elsewhere. And it's a stepping stone job. It's a job where you go and, because some people say, well, you don't have any head coaching experience. It's like, okay, well, you go to the G League and you have to understand, the G League is really difficult. You're limited with how many players are on your roster. Players can get called up at the day of your game, and then you're totally done. You're sitting there looking at your bench and you got 7 players. It's a very, very difficult job to manage. But it's also something where, you have to manage a small training staff. You have to manage a small coaching staff. You have to work with a general manager to tell them what you need. So it really is a good starting point if you're going to be a head coach in the league. So it's very possible. Like, I know in the past, Doug had turned down the opportunity to go to the G League, and I wouldn't expect him to go either at this point, because he's a front of the bench assistant. But that doesn't mean that one of these other coaches could go, you know what? I think that's what my resume needs if I'm going to take the next step. And so we'll have to wait and see what happens. But I wouldn't doubt that they promote from within.
speculated on Lindsay. Like Lindsay's been a back of the row assistant for 2 staffs now, and this could be the opportunity for her to get a chance to essentially run a program, like you just laid out right there. I think it'd be a great step for her. Obviously, she told us on this show that she wants to stick with the NBA. Obviously, the WNBA is attractive. College basketball is attractive, but she wants to keep making headway in the NBA. And to do that, sometimes you just got to take opportunities when they become available. And maybe this is the opportunity. As you just noted, we just saw Bobby was a back of the second row assistant, took this G League job. Now he's off to, it's not just a front row job, Hammer. It, like we talked about, like Philadelphia has expectations next year. This isn't some like little organization trying to come up and figure, like, this is Nick Nurse, a championship coach who's being brought in with the expectations of winning an NBA championship with Joel Embiid. So this is not only a good front row job for Bob to have, it's a really high profile one.
Oh yeah, it's a high profile job. It's a profile that last year it was Sam Cassell and Dave Yeager. I mean, that staff was phenomenal last year, and I don't know what's happening with all those guys. Sam Cassell went
in Boston.
Boston. Yeah.
Dave
Yeah.
Yeager,
So
I don't think we have a. I don't think.
I don't think we have a landing spot for Dave either. So as of right now, but it's one of those situations where, yeah, like if you're gonna, this is who you want to be. If you want to be an NBA head coach, you have to go through these steps. You've got to go get your, every once in a while, guys just get hired and they bump straight up to a head coach out of nowhere. But typically, you have to go do these things, and it starts with, like Luke Laux' summer is going to be the summer league head coach, and that's where it usually starts. You give somebody a little bit more, so they're game planning differently, and they're running a staff, and they're feeling what it's like to have players who have weird needs or making mistakes and all that stuff, where you're accountable for what they're doing, and there isn't someone above you who's accountable for it. You've got to be able to manage it. So yeah, I think that this is it's a good step for Bobby, and I'm happy for him. And I'm kind of bummed he had to leave Sacramento to make this move, but each coach is different, each of their paths are different, and you gotta hope that you end up back where you want to be at some point. But it's a good opportunity.
Sorry, Casey. I didn't connect that at all this morning. That's such a great observation, how this could be directly tied to Jordy not getting the job in Toronto.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if Jordy becomes the head coach of the Toronto Raptors, now there's a vacancy on the front row of the bench of the Sacramento Kings, and perhaps that makes sense for Bobby. That doesn't happen. Mm-hmm. Bobby has the opportunity to go to Philly and takes it. And you could probably make the argument it's good for Bobby to get out of here. Like sometimes it's I mean, I'm not suggesting at all that I don't want him to be here, but this is an opportunity for him to get out there with Nick Nurse and in a different group of individuals and be around them. Even though he wasn't on the Kings coaching staff last year, James, you know this. We all know this. He was around the coaching staff. He was there with the rest
of the time
before every playoff game. Like he was there for all of them. So maybe this is a good opportunity for him to get out and learn from some other championship caliber coaches.
Mm-hmm.
I totally agree. That's like texting back and forth with some people. Like in any walk of life, the best thing you should do is go somewhere where you can learn from the people around you, and you can learn from some of the best. It doesn't matter what you're doing, but you can learn something from the people around you, whether it's good or bad, and then you can take those things and incorporate them into how you work and how you perform at your job. And I think that this is one of those opportunities where Nick Nurse is an incredible coach. So going to work for Nick Nurse, that's a good thing. Mike Brown is an incredible coach. Working for Mike Brown is a good thing, and it's a way for you to really expand your horizons on your knowledge base, and really learn from some of the best that are out there.
Yeah. On the flip side, Jordy Fernandez staying here in Sacramento. We love it. We love Jordy Fernandez. We're ecstatic that he's staying here on the staff. We think he's going to be gone relatively soon
enough. Yeah.
But is this? I was saying earlier, it just seems like things change from time to time for sure, but it seems like going this for Jordy to go get a head coaching job this offseason seemed like a year early, maybe. And him being with the Kings having success again, you could see him going next offseason. But this offseason was maybe, get them interviews. Maybe you get in front of the right people and you can, sweep somebody off their feet and have a head coaching job. But I always looked at it as you get the interviews this summer, you get the jobs next summer. Is that typically how it goes, or is that just
No, it is. I mean, not everyone gets a job the next summer. I mean, we're looking at Charles Lee entering his second or third, but guys like Darvin Ham, they waited like 3 or 4 years where they had interviewed for head coaching jobs. And Jordy interviewed for head coaching jobs last year, but I think, it was more of the courtesy manner, last season. This season, he's getting like the full blown, like going in and giving someone your point of view and like really being part of a coaching search. And then you should learn from that and you should be able to take a step back and you should also ask for feedback. Like, what are the things that you liked? What are the things that you didn't like from my interview process? So wherever Jordy was mentioned, which was like 4 different spots, but like you want him to go back and talk to the people in Phoenix and talk to the people in Toronto and I think maybe Milwaukee, whatever, like all of the places that you were interviewed, go in there and get some feedback and then come back next year with a different game plan, with a slightly more convincing game plan, and maybe you get it next year. And so the NBA does kind of work that way. You kind of have to, for assistants, they kind of have to spend their tires for a couple of years and they've got to try out for this job and that job. And sometimes it's in the same summer where you're up for a couple of jobs early and you don't get one, and then a couple of jobs open later, and then you have this time to go and sort of reinvent yourself again, and how you're going to present yourself to the next ownership group. And so I think Jordy's probably learned a ton about himself and about this process this summer, just like he did last year. But this summer, I think, is one where he's really taken that step, and it's going to be tough to see that if he won't get a job next summer.
We'll come back with our 1320 Kings insider, James Ham. We'll talk more Kings basketball. We'll get an update on Sasha as well, as it looked like he was back to playing basketball. And KC asked me to remind him like 3 hours ago about something involving Victor Wembanyama. So if he remembers, we're going to pay that tease off.
I do remember.
We're dealing with KC return here on Sacramento Sports Leader, ESPN 1320. Clear.
I've got to give me 2 seconds. I'm going to go check on the dogs. No one's here except for me, and they're making noise, making sure no one's killed anyone. Corgi hasn't strangled out the pug. That's always a possibility.
I heard Paul George's podcast is actually pretty good. Got this clip. Jerry West was on the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Here's Jerry West talking about the Kobe.
He became a free agent, and his agent then was Rob Pelinka. So I met them in Orange County in a hotel room, and he said he wanted to come to Memphis and play. Really? And I looked at him, I said, "You kidding me?" And he said, "No." And I said, "Kobe, no. You belong somewhere out here." Mm-hmm. Okay. And even though he would have never played there, I just wanted to reassure him that don't feel like you have any obligation with me or the Grizzlies to play here. I guess in some sense that might have been tampering. I didn't look at tampering because he was at our house all the time. He ate at my house all the time. I felt more like a father figure with him. I had a wonderful relationship with him. Forget it as a basketball player. I loved what he stood for, his commitment to excellence. He wasn't afraid of failing. Once you get afraid of failing, you're going to fail. Mm-hmm. He was not afraid.
Interesting.
I've heard that. I didn't even know that was the name of a podcast.
Podcast B.
Yeah. I've heard good things about that podcast.
He's had some good guests on recently.
What's the Paul George podcast name?
Podcast B.
Oh. It's not 50 games or less?
Stop it.
That's just
James.
uncalled for.
James.
Wow, this is breaking news. Oh, is that what's going to be at the Ridge? Yo, the Ridge is going crazy right now. putting a yard house over there. Okay. Elk Crow stepping up. What was I about to say? I was about to say something. Oh, did you see the trailer for Winning Time?
Yes, I saw it on your
Winning Time is back.
I left you unblocked over the weekend, and I saw it on your page this morning. I love that they used the 80s song Obsession only because it used to be the theme to Saturday night's main event.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and that was the old theme to Saturday night's main event. Dun, dun, dun. Did you ever watch Saturday night's main event, Hammer?
No.
7:30 used to replace Saturday Night Live once a month. Blocked by Iguodala. There are plays that you could just hear.
Oh,
blocked by James.
Bang.
What are you guys watching?
They're talking about
They're just
Hunger
showing
Games.
NBA highlights.
I love the NBA finals.
Yeah.
All right.
Kobe.
Oh, that's one of the great plays all the time. When Giannis blocked DeAndre Ayton.
Yeah.
That was this alley-oop, game 4 of the finals. That was an unbelievable play. I think that's an underrated play. We don't talk about that play.
Poor DeAndre Ayton.
Look at this. Someone mentioned in the 5-game win streak in Oakland. Isn't it strange that they're in the middle of trying to close a deal in Las Vegas and they couldn't win all season long? They were 12-54 or something. And then lo and behold, it gets hung up in, and now they're talking about a 5-game win streak.
So the players are in on it too.
Well, that would be dark. That would be dark and something that should be investigated, that a team that can't win it all until they're up against it with legislation starts winning.
That's what I say about anybody that believes sports are fixed. I'm not saying that's what you're saying, Jan, but when they say, oh, no, it's fixed or a conspiracy, I was like, if you think that, then you have to believe the players are in on it. Like, you have to.
Yeah, I mean,
make or miss shots. They're the ones that miss, ground balls and fly ball, all this other stuff, miss passes and stuff like that. And if that's what you believe, you got to go all the way, though. You got to say the players are in on it too.
Yeah, I don't buy that everything's scripted for sure, but there are certainly times where I've thought, that guy looks like he doesn't want to win this game. So I don't know. And now we have all these dudes getting suspended.
There's 2 things. Another one is Kings related.
Uh-oh.
That I saw over the weekend.
Hey man, I won't mention this guy's name. I'll give him his initials. OJS.
Thank you.
Won't mention this guy's name.
What's this one?
I don't know. I don't know if.
Yeah, that's a good one.
That is funny. It's all timer.
Need to redo this board. All right, we're coming back, James. Back here with the 1320 Kings Insider and creator of the Kings Beat, man, James Ham. Make sure you are a premium subscriber over at thekingsbeat.com. Make sure you're subscribing to the podcast on YouTube or wherever you get podcasts from. Kenny, you had something on Victor Wembanyama earlier you wanted me to remind you of.
Yeah, there was. I was just seeing. Did you see that story over the weekend about how he got? It's weird how it was worded. I think it's much to do about nothing. But they said he got kicked off one of the French qualifying teams or something due to bad performance. But the article says he got kicked off and he'll be ready to play on Tuesday. What? What? But he had a terrible game. He was I guess.
I saw that he played a bad game.
It was phrased as a step up in competition over there. And it was 8 points, 3 rebounds, something like that. Just kind of got used and abused. And they were saying this has no.
Well, he falls to 24 then. That's the way.
There it is. That's
Victor
the answer.
Wembanyama falls to 24.
They said it has no effect, not even remotely close to any effect on the draft, but it was just a story that came out.
Well, what are we talking about then? I thought we were getting ready to drop him to 24.
Well,
I guess you got to have something to talk about when you already know who the number one pick
to 19
is.
to get him now.
Well, Let's see what we can do to move up to 19.
The other thing that I heard over the weekend, which made me chuckle. Did you see the report that came out that the Suns would have interest in Davion Mitchell?
I didn't see that either.
Yeah. And they can't get Chris Paul back. They have interest in There's a couple of teams, like Emmanuel Quickly's on there. A couple, like just like.
Oh, I did. Okay. Yeah.
Davion.
He was on a list of like 6 players.
Yeah. Davion wasn't on the headline.
No.
Davion was in the article.
No. He was down lower on the list.
Yeah, which is unfair. Davion's a good ball player.
They actually mentioned this would be a good look. Like we were like, who the hell comes in and play? They talked about Gabe Vincent going to Phoenix. That'd be a good look if Phoenix.
They got to pay him. Like Gabe needs to get paid.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter who.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter who it is. Like this is the biggest contract Gabe will probably get. He needs to get it.
I would say, well, you're right. Whatever is offered is offered. But I would say, maybe 10 to 12 million a year. It feels like they might have that to offer Gabe Vincent.
Yeah, maybe they do.
Oh, I don't know.
I mean, they got DeAndre, Devin, and KD
again,
30 plus.
I'm kind of assuming they moved DeAndre. Maybe
I don't think that's going to be as easy as people think. So
yeah, I don't think the math on that's going to work though.
Well, that too.
I don't think that's going to work. But they are eager. They are eager to get rid of him. I mean, everybody has. I mean, Miami's they've got the dirt on them. Like they've put the tombstone in place. Like they're dead. There was an article on The Athletic. Soon as this game's over, they need to call. They need to. Who do they need to go get? Game's over. Dame. They need to go get Dame Lillard. That wasn't like first take nonsense. That wasn't Stephen A. stuff. That was on The Athletic. Soon as it's over, Pat Riley needs to call Portland. Go get Dame Lillard.
I saw today that there was so there are rumors that Portland might be willing to take on DeAndre Ayton and a swap, assumably for Damian Lillard or something big like that. And one of the radio guys in Phoenix, who's been on top of everything, specifically said Portland has no interest in DeAndre Ayton.
Yeah, I mean, because it wouldn't be DeAndre straight across. They don't have any draft picks to trade.
No draft picks.
It doesn't work unless they got Oswald the Lucky Rabbit. This ain't gonna work.
Yeah,
the money isn't the exact same, but it would be like Nurkic, and I don't know if Phoenix wants that.
I don't think they.
No, I don't. Well, I mean, maybe if it saves you a bunch of money, you never know. But
it doesn't. It does. But he was like a $70 million deal. So it might save you money, but you're still paying $70 million for. It wouldn't be 70 now, but you're still paying a lot of money for Yusuf Nurkic.
That's probably not wise at this point.
James, are you familiar with Oswald the Lucky Rabbit?
I don't think so.
We managed to spend about 30 minutes diving into Oswald the Lucky Rabbit.
Nobody is. That's why.
No, he is. Everybody is now. He's the most important rabbit in history. He was the precursor to Mickey Mouse, and he was traded for Al Michaels. It's a true story.
I did know this.
Oswald the Lucky Rabbit was traded for Al Michaels.
I did know this. Yeah.
And so we knew the bones of the story. We really went into a deep dive about Oswald the Rabbit, and it's been a hell of a day, James.
Wow.
It's been a hell of a day.
Isn't it? It's Monday, right?
Yeah, it's gonna be a long week.
Season's over. June 12th, and we're in the midst of one of the least entertaining NBA finals in the last 10 years.
Facts.
I'm loving it. Finish them. Sweep the leg.
I have a feeling that's going to happen tonight, by the way. It flies in the face of everything Miami has done all postseason. I've stopped discounting Miami a long time ago. But when Jokic said, this game isn't emotional, we just have a game that we need to go win, I was like, oh, they're winning, and they might win by a lot.
Oh, look, it's just like I said what happened a long time ago.
Well, you flip-flopped 7 times since then.
Don't worry about that. Worry about what
what was on the board out there.
out there in the little fishbowl.
Flip-flopping
On the
all over
board
the place.
is Kenny, Nuggets in 5.
Fish out of water, dude.
I said Nuggets in 6. Brendan and Sean both said Nuggets in 6. I wanted to say Nuggets in 5, which I said on the pod, and then on Friday I said Nuggets in 5. But still, it's not. I'm still Nuggets in 6 because that's what I said initially.
Yeah, they could. I mean, Miami could pull this thing out tonight. I would just be really surprised if they won a second game in Denver.
Yeah,
and I'm really surprised to see that Sasha played today.
Hmm.
You have any update on that? I think it was Brendan Nunez who alerted us to the fact that Sasha's back in the lineup.
Yeah, I went checked the box score. He played 20 minutes. I think he scored like 8 points and had 4 rebounds. That's big. And they picked up they're up, is it 3-1? 3-1 in the finals there. And they won decidedly, like I think they won by 23. So he's well on his way. And I keep hearing like murmurs. That deal's done. Like there's a very, 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 very high likelihood that he will be a Sacramento King. And I may have heard a little bit on numbers, but I'm not going to share those until I get much closer to.
Until we hit in broadcast.
Yeah.
Then we'll have everything.
Yeah. Until we get to the point where I actually have it solid. It sounds like it's a pretty good deal.
There were a lot of very, very, very varies in there. Like so this.
Yeah.
This is happening. All right.
It sure does sound like it's happening. But again, anything can happen. It's all within his court. Like, what does he want to do? Does he want to? I think winning a Greek League championship would actually be a good thing for the Kings here. Just let him win this thing here, so he does feel like he won something on top of like the 17 MVP trophies that he now has in his like cabinet on his shelf in Greece somewhere on an island, I'm sure. So, but it sounds like it's and that's not from the Kings side. I've been hearing that outside that most people believe it's a done deal. But we'll have to wait and see until we have the official announcement. And then you have to remember that it's possible that they will not be able to announce it, and it will have to, because they have to do these things in a specific order. So it depends on how they're going to use their cap space and when they would actually bring him in and make him part of the squad.
Quick follow-up, Casey. Any concerns over the numbers that you may have heard?
My concerns are whether they're accurate or not. That's all.
That's a great way to dodge that question.
So just to kind of reiterate that too, what they would pay him, does that have a big effect financially on what they might do in the offseason? Or is that separate from what they might do with Trey Lyles, or if they decide to sign Harrison or go with somebody else? Like, are they not? Obviously, if they're giving them a big number, maybe it's related. But from some of the things that we've talked about, are they not really related? Are they mutually exclusive?
Well, okay. So if we look at the guys that you just mentioned, Harrison Barnes is full Larry Bird rights, so the Kings can sign him for any money that they want. Like his cap hold is $27.5 million. He can make 140% or something of what he made last year. Well, I think he can actually make more than that. Like they can pay him whatever they want. Trey Lyles is an early bird. So he basically has the same rights that Rashawn Holmes had when they went up to $12 million a year to sign him. So the Kings aren't going to go $12 million a year for Trey Lyles, who like hat tip to Trey Lyles, got engaged this weekend. I don't know if you guys saw that, but congrats to Trey Lyles. Yeah. So no, if it's those players, if the Kings decide to retain Harrison Barnes, to bring back Trey Lyles, to add the 24th pick, and to bring in Sasha Vezenkov, they don't have to do anything different. They just have to sign their guys to whatever price they want to sign them. And then it comes down to how they sign them. So again, if you have a biannual exception is up to like $4.5 million. But that biannual exception is only good for 2 years. And then you don't have full rights to Sasha Vezenkov. If you carve out part of your mid-level exception, then you can go, I think, up to 4 years. But yeah, I think it's a minimum of, well, no, it's a minimum of 2, but you can either go 3 or 4 years on the mid-level, and you can break up parts of that. So that's where we start getting into like the finer nuances of the cap, because the Kings are going to want to have money to go sign somebody else in addition to what they're already doing, or at least have the flexibility to trade and do things like that. It just really does come down to whatever it is that you can do, like the way that you do it, like what order you do them in, and then how they want to attack the offseason, because they can just rescind the rights to all of their like their mid-level and their biannual exception and Trey Lyles and Harrison Barnes and Terrence Davis, and they come up with like $23 million, and they can go chase somebody. And then they can, on top of that, they can go out and try to trade Rashawn Holmes and not take anything back, give up something in that deal. And next thing you know, they might be up to like 33 or 35 million bucks. So there are ways in which they could totally change course. And then once they did all of that, they can come back and use their room exception to sign Sasha Vezenkov to a separate contract. So again, it's complex. It's a bunch of puzzle pieces all over the place. And you have to figure out how you want to build your team and what your objective is in this summer. Is it to take a huge splash and to chase a Cam Johnson or a PJ Washington, or to make a big trade and try to lure a John Collins or a OG Anunoby out of their current locations to your spot? You really have to decide sort of the direction you want to take, and then we'll figure out how they piece in Sasha Vezenkov into this situation.
The cap is the most confusing thing about sports, because like when
It's
you talk
complex.
when you talk about cap money that's available, like you have, like, we'll just use a number. You have $30 million available, but if you use the biannual and the mid-level and all of that stuff, like on players that you already have, don't you still have $30 million of cap space available?
No.
So that does eat in that. I mean, I know it counts
There,
on the cap. Like, I know it's money that you have to pay, but that counts as money you're spending.
yes. So if you have $30 million, you really, like, without looking at any of your players or anything else, you take out the mid-level exception at like 11 to 12 million, and you take out the biannual exception right around 5 million. And so you have what, like 13 million left. Now you can dump both of those. You can just rescind the rights to them. But what you're not allowed to do is to have those and your 30 million bucks. You can't have your cake and eat it too.
So,
but if
you drop those, if you drop those like by name, then you have $30 million to spend on one player.
Well, you have 30 million that you can spend on any number of players.
Yeah.
But yeah, you have $30 million floating out there. But again, that means you say you have to cut ties. So
Right.
like the Larry Bird rights and stuff like that, you have to waive the rights to guys like Harrison Barnes, Terrence Davis, Alex Lynn, Trey Lyles, all of these guys. If that's what you're going to do, if you're going to do clear cap space. Yeah, but
And
then
it's why these teams that are so far over the cap are so upset about losing these designations, because it's their lone ability to add players while being insanely far over the cap.
Yeah, totally. Well, that and like, so if you're at the cap, right? You're not at the luxury, but if you're at the cap, you still have your $10 million mid-level and your $5 million biannual.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you're a true cap room team, so what we were talking about, the 30 million, yeah, someone is asking in the chat, isn't the mid-level around 12.5 million? It's right around there. It's like 12.5, whatever it is. But if you're a team that just has that 30 million bucks, you have that, you can rescind the rights to all of those exceptions. But then because you're under the cap, you get what's called the room exception, which is like 7.8 million up to 7.8. And that room exception, just like the mid-level or the biannual, you can break up into multiple contracts. It can go to multiple players.
They thought of everything.
They did.
It's wild.
They had to keep coming up with names for the exceptions that they've had. Got the mid-level, the biannual, the room. Can't wait for the new one. I don't know what the new one's going to be, but I can't wait for it. The Warriors exception. Well, it's where you just really pissed off your whole cap, and you got to do something. swear
Yeah.
you insisted on keeping Draymond Green. We had to keep a special rule for it.
Well, I mean, I think it is interesting though, because if you end up with all of your cap space, your 23 million bucks, and you said goodbye to everybody, you could still go out and make your moves, and then you can come back with that room exception, and you can split that between Sasha and Trey Lyles and bring them both back. And you can use part of your cap space, your true cap space, on just signing Harrison Barnes, if that's what you want to do. Yeah, there's a lot of ways you can do this. It's really you can trade away all your cap space, and then you can come back and use your mid-level and use your other, like, there's a bunch of ways you can massage this thing. And the good teams are the ones that are on top of it the whole time and always thinking ahead and have a really solid game plan.
And you would advise against renouncing those rights, right? Just in the because the scare of that is, maybe it upsets Trey or Harrison Barnes, and whatever you think you might be able to bring them back on. Well, you've now messed up that relationship, and you're caught with your pants down in that situation. But I mean, if you have an understanding, which I don't know, legally you could have an understanding. Well, they're your own players, so maybe you could. Like, hey, we want to have some more money to be able to do some things in free agency. Can we renounce your rights, and we're going to come back to you and take care of you? But this allows us the freedom to spend some money. That's typically not how things get done, or is that something we see more often than not?
Oh no, that's how it gets done. Yeah, I mean, you have a very clear idea of what each player wants and about what their real value is, and then you have another dollar figure that you're willing to pay for them. And that's one thing that I'll always remind people, that Monty McNair came up in the Daryl Morey system, and they firmly believe never to overpay your own free agent. They do not overpay their own free agent.
They putting that to test this offseason.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll see if Daryl Morey throws
Yeah.
$200 million at James Harden. He has abandoned that philosophy.
Well, but we're talking about star levels. So when we're looking at all the other players, like if you assess a guy at $4 million trade value, I mean $4 million in salary value, and someone offers him 7 or 8, he walks away. That's the way it goes. It's the Bogdan Bogdanovic deal. Like, they had a dollar figure that they probably would have gone, and then the dollar figure went higher than they wanted it to go, and they said, okay, we're not going to sign him. And they had a really tough time because they were trying to evaluate if that's what his true value was or not. And they came up with the idea that no, they weren't going to match.
And he was right. In my opinion, Monty McNair was right.